Hi, I'm Heather Telford and I have a couple of alcohol ink cards to share with you today. I've worked on Dura-Bright White craft plastic. It goes by both Dura-Bright White and White Craft Plastic. It's from Graphics and you can get it in two sizes. This piece is 6x6 and I'll be using Ranger Honeycomb alcohol ink, some rubbing alcohol, an ink blower, and also one of the alloys, the Mind color, which is kind of a copper brass sort of color. You can see when you drop the honeycomb on the craft plastic, it doesn't move very fast. It's kind of good if you don't want it to get away from you. But as soon as you add the rubbing alcohol, it really starts diluting and moving across the plastic. This is the original kind of handheld blower. I know there's a new one out, but this one is working well for me. You could use compressed air, you could even use a straw or an air compressor if you have one, but I like to use this. And you can see I put it in the palm of my hand and I actually pump the air with my fingers rather than using kind of a pinch between my thumb and fingers, because I have arthritis in my thumbs and this is the way that it doesn't hurt as I do it. And I keep on adding rubbing alcohol around the edges and then moving the ink back and forth, which dilutes it a bit and it makes these soft kind of waves of color, which is what I'm after. I'm not after those cute little tendrils that shoot out when you push the alcohol ink with air. I'm after more softer bubbles and waves. This is the Mind alloy and it doesn't move much unless it's with one of the other inks or with some rubbing alcohol. So you can see when I'm pushing air on that, it will move really well and it'll break up into really fine particles as well as kind of cling to itself and make bolder patterns. So what I'm after here is just a random pattern. I don't want it to cover the entire panel. I want some white showing. So I'm just continuing to tilt the paper, move the ink around with the air and just get a pretty sort of, it's a little bit of a marble type pattern. And while the panel's sitting there flat, you can't really see the shine of the alloy, but the shine is really lovely. So I'll show you that later in the video. With this process, it's just a matter of knowing when to stop. Like I said, I don't want the whole thing covered, so I'm just playing with adding more rubbing alcohol and moving the ink around until I've got a design that I'm happy with. And you can see there's a little gap with no liquid at all, so I added a bit of rubbing alcohol and then I can move color into that space. And these edges, the more I blow it, the lighter the color is and the softer and more delicate the pattern is, which is what I want right there on the edge. And don't forget that you can still tilt and move the ink that way. That's quite easy and you still get those particles of the alloy moving around. My second panel, I'm using turquoise alcohol ink and a different one of the alloys. It's the gilded color this time, and that's more of a gold. I've just added plenty of rubbing alcohol either side of that blue, and now I'm tilting the color into it and then I'm going to start blowing it around. I haven't tried this with an air compressor, but I do have a friend with an air compressor, so I might be tempted to see if I can borrow hers and see how it goes. I am happy with how successful it is with the little hand blower though. I think that it's doing a good job, and even with this much pumping of the little tool, my hand wasn't particularly sore at the end, so that's good, because that might be putting you off, I'm sure. And I just love the way I'm getting these soft blues the more alcohol, rubbing alcohol I add, and then some of those bubble shapes. And I'm just going to keep doing that and trying to get some interest to my panel by having more of the pattern on one side than the other, so more white space on one side. And now I've added the gilded, and you can see I can move that around if I've got rubbing alcohol to help move it. And there when I tilt it, you can see how much rubbing alcohol is on the plastic at the moment, but of course it dries really quickly, it evaporates, so you might be working on one area and another area is drying out, so you might need to add more rubbing alcohol before you can move that around. I'm really happy with some of those delicate patterns on the left hand side, but then there are a few areas where I've got really dark color that I want to dilute and soften. I love how the edges, when I blow the air on the gilded alloy, I love how the edges, like the metallic particles go to the edges and kind of give a little rim. It's like the little white bubbles on the seashore when the waves come in. You can see there I wanted to dilute that big blue blob up at the top there, so I added more rubbing alcohol to that, and I'm just spreading that out. My design is still very much concentrated in the middle there, so I want to fill in some more area with ink, but rather than add more ink, I'm just adding more rubbing alcohol and pushing the ink into that area to get some soft patterns up there. It kind of looks a little bit like marble with the threads of the gold running through it, which is a lovely look. And yeah, I'm almost finished with this one, and then I'll show you not the process of making these panels into cards, but the finished cards, and I'll talk you through the products that I used. This panel I used a penny black light as a feather die. I cut it out of a copper cardstock. Then I embossed a sentiment from Birthday Humour in Brutus Monroe penny embossing powder, and I cut those squares with waffle flower square nesting dies. For the blue panel, I cut the sentiment just for you out of 2 layers of turquoise and then a gold layer on top, and stacked them. This is another panel that I did with juniper and statue, and same process, just moved it around with air and then stacked some gold die cuts on top. This one reminded me of glaciers or icebergs and the blues that you get in them, so that's why I put polar bears on it. I used turquoise and stream alcohol inks and then silver from Pinata to do the colors, same process, and then I chose a penny black polar bears die to just go with the theme of that. I hope you enjoyed watching this process. It's really quite addictive, just playing with the alcohol inks moving about on the craft plastic. All the supplies are listed below and on my blog, so feel free to pop over there for more information, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.